All right, so this is part two, not four, two of discussing cannabis. So last time we discussed all the basics, difference between CBD, THC, a little bit into terpenes, and how that black market CBD oil that you've been purchasing is a load of shit, pretty much. So Joseph's come back, and I actually want to say, I was going to say this to you off the recording, but I'm really grateful for you coming on and discussing, because you are such a wealth of knowledge and you bring so much energy to it. So thank you.
Oh, no, it's an absolute pleasure and privilege, Michaela. Always good to chat.
I know
Yeah.
last time we stopped recording and we were chatting for another 45 minutes or something.
Yeah, we're like, we better get off, else we're just not going to stop.
Yeah, you needed to eat. Today we're going to discuss, we're going to delve into the stigmas around cannabis a little bit. We're going to go further into some terpenes, and then we're going to just have a chat about how we know what strains are best for us. And we're going to really talk about our personal experience versus how a doctor would do it. But we'll talk about that later. Shall we start with the stigmas?
Yes, let's start with stigmas. What stigmas did you have in mind?
So,
what stigmas do you want to talk about?
last time I think I spoke a little bit into the criminalization of cannabis and the 13th Amendment and how it was used as a political agenda to keep slavery alive in the US, and then Australia just kind of follows suit, and we just kind of got stuck here. I definitely know growing up, you heard weed will give you schizophrenia, and it'll make you a drop kick. It'll make you lazy and you won't do anything. So before we even go into the stigmas, I do want to say there is, with everything, you can be addicted to anything and nothing, depending on what hole you have to fill. People can get addicted to things with no addictive properties to them, because is it really about the addictive properties, or is it about the feeling that that person has that makes them escape whatever they're feeling on a normal day-to-day? So people can have love addictions, they can have food addictions, they can have addictions to things that really do cause chemical addictions, but mainly addictions are a form of escapism.
Yes. Yeah.
Does cannabis have any addictive properties?
You pretty much just summed up everything that I was about to say. So yeah. Does cannabis have addictive properties?
Nicotine, you know how nicotine actually does have a chemical reaction in the body and then causes an addiction, and then you've got things like oxys, opioids, they have addictive properties. Go on.
Yeah. So basically, cannabis doesn't make you develop a physical tolerance or physical dependence, for example, an opioid or the way nicotine does. So when you have an opioid, for example, your receptors actually change to a certain degree. So your receptors will actually modulate. It's the same with cannabis. But the thing is, they change to a point that when you take that drug away, your body goes, okay, where the hell is my opium? Where the hell is the opioid? And if it doesn't get its opioid, it's going to go, you're going to get your really serious withdrawal symptoms. So if, for example, opioid, if someone's a chronic user of opioid and they stop all of a sudden, they're going to get really bad withdrawals. For example, they're going to get diarrhea, they're going to get anxiety, they're going to get paranoia, they're going to be feeling just absolutely crap. They won't be able to sleep, be trouble regulating their mood. Cannabis, your receptors will change, but they're not going to change to that degree. You're not going to develop a physiological dependence on them. So
Sorry, keep going.
Yeah. No, yeah. Usually symptoms will subside after around about a week. People struggle within that first week, and then after that week, they'll subside, and then receptors will turn to baseline after a month.
Yeah. Because I was going to say, your true potheads will claim that they have cannabis withdrawals, but I like to speak into being a conscious consumer a lot, because you can abuse anything.
Yeah.
Like I said, love addiction, you can trauma bond, you can anxious attach, that is your way of abusing it. Same with food. We've got binge eating, and then we have the other end of that, which is super restrictive disordered eating. They are two ends of the scales of you know, how people are unconscious with that sort of thing, or hyper conscious. So I always talk into being a conscious consumer, and I say that cannabis is a real habitual drug. So, and the word drug I use in a medical sense. So
yeah.
you know, people say to me, like, don't you just like get the munchies and go to sleep? Like, yeah, sometimes if I have developed a habit around doing that, like whatever I decide to place my attention on when I'm smoking is, and the thing is, because you go into a somewhat unconscious state, your brain becomes like malleable. You are almost, I'm not sure if you know what brainwave we kind of go into when we're high, but when we're talking about like meditation and stuff, we change, our brainwaves change, and then go into more of a subconscious, our thinking patterns change. I believe cannabis operates in the same way. So if we're, and I'm sure this has happened to you, when like sometimes I'll get into the kitchen, cook a full meal, be halfway through it, and I'll be like, I'm eating right now, because I've like almost developed this like habit of, I'm going to get high, I'm going to go to the kitchen, I'm going to eat. And then I like to point out to people, it's a bit of a chicken or the egg situation, right? So like, are you getting the munchies or are you smoking to binge?
Exactly. And you're spot on. Like, being a conscious consumer is 110% what you need to do. Like, be aware of what you're doing before, during, and after you've had your cannabis, right? So like, so I know some people set intentions beforehand. I know I'll kind of set an intention. Like, sometimes I'll, you'll medicate, and then if I need to do any cooking, I'll do some cooking. And I'll have the intention to cook. But if you have no intention, you just medicate. Before you know it, some people are just on the couch and they're not moving. They haven't done anything. They're like, oh man, I did nothing. So being conscious of how much you have, what you're going to do. I think a good way to do that is, some people like journal.
Yes.
Yeah, having like a journal is a great idea.
Yeah,
just to see how you're going. Yeah.
I always like, because some days I want to, and I'm actually going through a period where I've like cut myself off it for a little bit, because I've got way too much spare time on my hands. So all I'm doing, I feel like I need to turn down this light. All I'm doing is smoking, eating, and sleeping. And that creates like a negative loop, because as soon as you're sober, you're like, oh my God, why did I do nothing all day? I wasn't going to do that because I was smoking without an intention. Right? Whereas when I'm in a really good place with cannabis, and sometimes to break that cycle, you just need to not smoke for a little bit, because like I said, whatever habits you start to form, I feel like you form them a lot quicker when you are doing it when you're high. Whenever you're forming a habit when you're high. There's sometimes when I exercise or clean whenever I'm stoned, because I've created that habit. But I always say to people, if you're more inclined to go into the realm of doing nothing, then like you said, set an intention, write down on the journal, why am I smoking today?
Yeah.
And that way you can avoid the escapism side of things as well, where people are just like smoking because they don't want to deal with shit. And then when they have no weed, they're like, I can't sleep. I'm stressed. I'm not coping. It's like, yeah, because you've just like avoided.
Exactly. Yeah.
To go to sleep, and now you don't have your crutch anymore. So set an intention and then write down a list of what you want to do. And I say, do not sit down. If you sit down, that's when you're gonna sleep. Like just like smoke as you're doing things, and then like as soon as you finish, just focus on the one task. As soon as you finish that one task, cross it off. What's the next thing that I want to do? And like make it, you can write down little tasks, or like and heaps of little tasks, or like big tasks. I find sometimes I just like, if I write down clean the house, that's enough, instead of writing down all the different types of things that I want to clean, because then you kind of just get on a roll and then you're done and you're like, oh, is there anything else I need to do today? Let me check the list. No, now I can make something to eat and sit down and enjoy the rest of my high. And then that way you create that balance.
Exactly. Nice.
I did want to touch on like being the conscious consumer because yeah, like there's people out there that abuse benzos, you know, like and use those as party drugs. They're a prescription. They're actually a lower schedule than actually their
And
same
cannabis.
schedule. Are they the same schedule or are they lower?
No, they're no, you're right. They're actually some depending on the benzo, but some benzodiazepines are lower schedule than cannabis. But they're considered a drug of dependence because you can be dependent on.
Yeah.
That's the difference there. Yeah. And it comes back to dopamine as well, right? Because like when you have these drugs, they in some form or fashion, they're going to release dopamine in the brain. So being aware that okay, you're going to get that dopamine hit. If you're doing it too frequently, that's obviously when it becomes an issue, and that's when you have to be. That's when the conscious consumer part comes in.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I have noticed that coupled with being on your phone is so bad.
The Instagram holes, Michaela, so bad sometimes.
You're not even absorbing anything, and it just like
just brainlessly scrolling. You just
keeping on in the background, like hang on, just have everything blasted. Like that shit, you come out of that high and you feel like crap. So like, yes, cannabis can be a bad thing when you couple it with other things and are unconscious to it, which I guess leads us into the stigma, right? The laziness. So you said you've done a ton of research. You go off. Talk to us.
So I did a ton of research. Not so much on well, if you look at a lot of people who are successful as well, a lot of people have cannabis and they're successful in a sense. So that kind of just defeats the stigma straight away. It's when it comes down to too much consumption, so overconsumption, and that's when it's not regulated. That's why it's regulated here, right? So it's prescribed. You're meant to have a certain amount a day. That's when the conscious consumer comes in. All right. I remember you saying last time you have one joint for the day, and that's perfect for you, right?
Down to one a week now.
One a week now. See, that's what I mean. So your consumption is changing. It's fluid, which is the way it should be, because you're like, okay, do I need some now? It doesn't have to stay consistent all the time. There's the stereotype. It's like, yeah, I smoke weed every day. You know, you don't have to smoke weed every day if you don't want to, or you don't need to.
I fully resonate with that, right? Because a part of my identity is being a pothead. Like, people know me as that, and then when I say I'm smoking one joint a week, they're like, "Oh,"
they freak out.
And I'm like, I know, I like that about me too, but right now it's not serving its purpose. Like it's a scale, right? Like with everything in life, you get your positives, you get your negatives, and you got to be able to recognize when it's not serving you for right now. It's like the same as sleep. Sleep is fantastic, but if we're having too much sleep, then we're depressed.
Yeah, exactly. Too much of anything, whether it be sleep, even exercise, eating, cannabis, alcohol, it leads to problems. That's why you need to find that balance and find what works for you. And everyone is going to be completely different. Yeah.
I think unintentionally we just broke down the stigma around like the laziness.
Yeah, just
all got to do with unconscious consumption. And like obviously the younger someone is, because you definitely hear about like it ruining someone's life if they've started it as like a youth, like underage. We are less in control of our minds. We are less aware of what our day-to-day is doing for us, and we fall into this unconscious programming trap where we just wake up and do the same thing. Like I'm sure you've experienced that that thing where like you go to get the joint that you half smoked and you're like, wait, where is it? Who took my joint? And like you've already smoked it because like you've gone into that unconscious. Like I know of people that I grew up with that they would wake up and rip a bong because they just got into that habit and then they didn't know how to not do that.
Exactly. And it's a habit as well. The research shows when you're younger, especially 15 to 25, that age, your brain is still developing at that stage. There's a lot more white matter in the brain. So cannabis, what that means is cannabis is going to be so much more effective in that age range compared to after 25. So they say that, use should definitely be moderated. It's even suggested that you shouldn't use it before 25 because that's when the brain's fully developed. But some people need it, some people use it. But I found that a very interesting fact there. Yeah. So being young, cannabis is going to influence you a lot more compared to after 25.
I've got a question for you. This is for sure a controversial question. Everyone's going to have a
Yeah.
different response. Because it is down to the conscious consumer and people can abuse literally everything or anything, and some things are so readily available. Personally, where would you like to see the responsibility in the hands of the government with regulations like how Australia is doing things, or do you agree more in the, well, again, it's everyone's got to look after themselves, and therefore it be like available recreationally, and that like consumption is up to the individual, and if they aren't able to consciously consume, then that's on them.
Yeah, no, good question. Good question, Michaela. Me, personally, I think where we're at now is you definitely need a governing body to govern how much people can buy, consume, how they consume, and then the forms of what they're buying. That definitely needs to exist. But I also believe that what am I trying to say? Yeah, you definitely need a government body to control it. But I think education is probably the most important thing at the moment here in Australia.
Yeah.
The way America is doing it is fantastic, but if you do go over to America, it's still quite regulated, especially in the states of like Colorado, California. Like you still need to be over 21. You still need to show ID. You can only buy a certain amount. And pretty sure they have a database, so you can't go from dispensary to dispensary buying different things. So they actually search your name up and it will come up, oh, this person's bought 28 grams today.
Yeah, I have to hand over my passport, and I actually have to buy it in cash because I cannot use an international card.
Really? You're not allowed to use an international card?
Did you?
Oh, that's right. Because the banking system's federal over there and it can't be used in cannabis. Yes, yes. Some issues. But yeah, no, I seriously think there should be a governing body involved. Whether it's as strict as it is now, I think that's going to change over time. But people being educated about how to use cannabis, it's just like alcohol. Like we had don't drink and drive campaigns and whatnot. If we educate the people in the right way, I think it should be like the way America is. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, kind of treated like alcohol. You have to be.
Yeah, treat like alcohol. Yeah, if you respect it, it's good.
I personally think like I'm kind of in two minds. I'm kind of like there's really no need for it to be more legalized than what it is currently in Australia. Like the need for the push because it's already accessible. Like for someone like myself that was buying it on the street for so many years, and now I have a prescription that is filled out through telehealth over the phone, and the price is really not that different to what it was on the street, like maybe a little bit more, but then the quality of what you're getting is better, and therefore you're smoking less anyway. Like,
yeah.
Why? Like, why does it need to be more available? Because people are lazy and they're not conscious consumers? Like, is that why? But I agree with you. I think it's just responsible to have some sort of governing body. I think my personal opinion would be in the same way as a pharmacy, and you have a pharmacist behind the counter. So there's some medications that you have to go to the pharmacist for, things like antihistamines. You have to go and ask the pharmacist for it. And then the pharmacist will just be like, hey, are you on anything? Have you had these before?
Yeah. What are you using it for? Like,
yeah, and then
basically educate the patient. Yeah.
Yeah.
You tell the person, what do you need this for? Like, why?
Yeah. But let me go into my story a little bit. I have done another video on it, but I guess the problem, even for a conscious consumer, when it's not properly regulated, and I had my own experience when I went into MedMen in California. I went in and I said, I want some edibles for an international flight. And the bitch goes, here, eat this whole packet. And I said, are you sure? She goes, yeah, you'll be fine. If anything, it won't be enough. I had 100 milligrams. And for an hour, do you know how I was keeping myself upright? In my head, I was counting to 10 over, like just get through 10 more seconds, just get through. And I'm lucky that I am very mentally strong, that I stopped myself from greening out until I was at a point where I was able to, because it was inevitable. But I threw up in the toilet on the flight before we, thank God I needed to throw up before we took off, because imagine if we were like mid taking off, I would have, and it would have smelled like weed and it would have been
Oh,
like bad. But like,
yeah.
that
I
woman
don't know how you
at the
functioned.
dispensary, the fact that she told me, because I said to her, I've had edibles before, I smoke every day, but it's not regulated in Australia, so I don't know the milligrams of consumption when I've had edibles before.
Yeah, yeah.
And she goes, have 100 milligrams. Do you want to tell people how many milligrams you generally consume?
Yeah, so good. I was going to say 100 milligrams. That's crazy. Okay. So to put that into perspective for everyone watching or listening, um, a standard dose, that's an effective dose, is usually 5 to 10 milligrams. So you had 10 times the effective dose.
I
And most
actually
people,
passed
yeah,
out. So mum thought I just went to sleep. I got hot, cold sweats, passed out, like actual passed out. Mum thought I was asleep
yeah,
and she's like, good, she's quiet. But
you were
like
just out.
I was out. Like, like if mum knew, like if I was standing, I would have dropped to the floor, sort of out,
Yeah.
you know? Like luckily I'm okay and it's just weed. But I guess we should kind of roll into the next topic then. You cannot overdose from cannabis. What happened to me is
No,
the worst case scenario.
exactly. Yeah. And like lucky you were in like an environment where you could sit down, you could relax, where you could
That
just
was
pass out and
hardly
wait
a
it
good
out.
environment.
It's not a good environment, but at least you could sit down. Do you get what I mean? Like that's important just to do nothing and wait it out because that's what once you've ingested it, that's all you really can do. There's no real way of getting it out of the system. But you can't overdose on cannabis. You're going to be most people are going to be totally fine. The only thing to look out for are people with arrhythmia problems, like serious heart conditions, because it can change the rhythm of your heart. In this, we're talking large amounts now.
Like a
But
hundred
no,
milligrams up.
yeah, oh, you probably need even more than that. I have no idea. But they say you'd need, it was like something like your body weight plus more to consume for it to be lethal for you. And that's a 50% chance of you dying as well. So it's not even a guarantee.
Yeah. There's no
Yeah,
recorded deaths from cannabis from
no,
what I've researched.
no recorded deaths from cannabis. No, not from like an overdose, for example, because it doesn't, there's no receptors in the brain that affects our breathing or anything like that. Opioids, even alcohol, like it affects the way you breathe. So too much will actually shut down your breathing, and that's usually how it happens. Cannabis isn't going to do that to you. Yeah.
Right. All right. So I listened to I don't know, it was kind of like a podcast last night that a friend sent me that was a story about, I think she was in Vancouver. It
Mm.
was a Canadian girl who started smoking dabs and vape pens, and it, look, I don't fully agree with the story, not that it's for me to agree or disagree, but the girl, long story short, the girl committed suicide. And the family
Oh,
is saying that that cannabis, that THC created this drug-induced psychosis that made her kill herself. Now, they also mentioned in the whole story that she was getting depressed throughout the pandemic and that other
mhm.
drugs were being consumed as well. But
Yeah,
personally, I'm not a big fan of oil vapes, dabs, wax, shatter, all of that, because it's just like a bit unnecessary. And it's also
yeah,
no longer the plant because you have to extract it through solvents. Do you
yeah.
want to delve into that a little bit and talk a little bit about how that is different to the flower and
Of
even
course. Yeah, yeah, of course. So with extracts, it is a little bit different. There are two main types of extracts. There's solvent based, so that's where you actually do use a solvent, and then there's solvent.
know what the solvents are?
Yeah, so usually common solvents that they'll use would be carbon dioxide or butane. Those are two really common ones. Um,
Toxic.
So yeah, it's usually a hydrocarbon. It's usually a naturally occurring hydrocarbon. The thing is, when you use those solvents are going to be in the end product. It is a little bit more pure because you're going to get higher THC percentages because the butane and the carbon dioxide actually extract a lot more compared if you don't use a solvent. So you might get up to 90, 95% THC in this extract. The only thing is when you inhale that, you inhale butane. Do you get what I mean? So it's quite harsh, and it will make it. I don't know how good that will be for the lungs. And you're having something that's 95% THC, so your tolerance is going to go through the roof really quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Unnecessary.
exactly. You're getting, and if you look at that, if you look at the like what's going on in the brain when that happens, you're going to get a really big spike really fast, and then that dopamine's going to drop off. So that might last maybe less than an hour, and then you can top up again. But the thing is, if you keep doing these dopamine spikes, it's not going to work well in the long run. And then that's probably what happened in this case. Her neurotransmitters were dysregulated. She was obviously going through a lot more, and then the combination of incorrect cannabis use plus a combination of other things.
Yeah, mandates, social media, her being
Just
young.
everything.
Like, I don't think cannabis, the flower, is to blame for that. I definitely, and like also, what the hell are those solvents doing in the body?
Yeah, your body will process them because they're naturally occurring hydrocarbons. Like anything that goes into the body, it has to be processed. But too much of, like, the same thing, same principles before. Too much of anything is no good. A little bit is actually quite effective, especially for people with nerve pain, because we have the cartridges here, and they'll probably be around about 80% THC. It's rapid acting, so when they need it, it works. The thing is, if you abuse it and use it too much, it's going to backfire. Yeah.
And also, like, again, with the regulation, like if it's something that is not as regulated, then
Yeah.
what's really in that? Because then, like, shit like chronic, the fake weed that went around.
Oh yeah. I do not go anywhere near that stuff because the thing is, you don't know how that's going to react to the body at all. Like, you have no idea what's going to happen. Yeah.
Also, there's like on the street, there is something that you can spray on the bud to make it way heavier. So
Yes.
dealers can get more money for their product because they can weigh it at a heavier weight than what it actually is. God knows what that is that you're smoking. And then in the US, I'm pretty sure, is it PCP that they find that it can be laced with? Like,
Yeah, it can be laced with different things. Even the growth hormone they use, that's proven to be carcinogenic. So if you're smoking something that's really carcinogenic, if they're putting that hormone in there. Yeah, or cannabis can be laced if you buy it off someone else. That's the thing. Like, if you get it from a dispensary, that has to go through GMP standards. So that's literally gone through everything. It's been irradiated to a point where even the microbes in there, it's almost sterile. So it's a lot cleaner than what you'll find.
yeah. So
Yeah.
pretty much like get it through a doctor or like find someone that grows it organically.
Yeah, like you want the most natural, non-contaminated source possible. And the only way to guarantee that, I'd say, is a dispensary. That's the only way to guarantee that.
To what?
Yeah. The only way to guarantee that is to go to get that from a dispensary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's probably the only way.
Which I guess brings us into our next stigma, which is that weed gives us schizophrenia. So like we've already touched on the fact that there's so many other elements that could be contributing to any kind of psychosis that is induced before we're even like getting to the topic of the actual plant having any involvement. So the concentrations, what else is going on for that person, history of mental illness, I guess, and then like things like solvents and other chemicals that could be that the plant could be laced with. But I have some things that I can read out about schizophrenia, but what research did you do?
Well, so schizophrenia is very complex. It's got a really complex pathophysiology. It's very complex. It's not very straightforward. There's a lot of causes. They don't know what exactly causes it, and there's a lot of factors involved, which range anywhere between, it ranges from neurotransmitters to your genetics to your environment. Basically, it's a bunch of everything. It's not just one thing. And what they usually find is it's dysregulation of your neurotransmitters. It could be genes. There's a predisposition to schizophrenia if you have specific genes or mutations in genes. But in short, they really don't know what causes it.
Yeah. So like
Yeah.
the fact that they say cannabis causes schizophrenia, it's more of a scare tactic than evidential.
Yeah, well, I think the reason they relate it to schizophrenia is because when you consume too much cannabis, you can have like a cannabis-induced psychosis. But people with schizophrenia, if they have any kind of drug, whether they have alcohol, whether they have cannabis, they might have a benzo, that's going to dysregulate their dopamine. Exactly. It's going to dysregulate their dopamine anyway. So, um, causing any kind of imbalance is just going to exacerbate their symptoms, right? But they did do some research. THC might exacerbate symptoms, but they actually did some research in schizophrenia with CBD, and that actually relieved the symptoms.
I have some things to read out about that, actually.
Oh, yes, read away.
So this is from the book Patient's Guide to Medicinal Cannabis.
Yeah.
That's written by, I can't remember his name, and I don't have the book in front of me because a friend has it, hence why I've got screenshots of it. But he is the botanist and the founder of Synergy in California. So he's like one of the OGs. Like, he creates plants and he's been helping people for a very long time. So the relationship between the endocannabinoid system and schizophrenia has been the subject of scientific research for several decades. Early studies show that schizophrenics had elevated levels of anandamide. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah.
And endogenous?
Endogenous? Yeah. So anandamide is the endogenous cannabinoid
Transmitter that works on the same receptor as THC. Which caused speculation that this could be part of the cause of the illness. By 2012, a study demonstrated that as CBD relieved patients' symptoms, anandamide levels rose in concert. One of the main authors of the study, D. O'Malley, hypothesized that the high levels seen in people with schizophrenia aren't the cause of the problem, but the result of the brain's attempt to solve it are. It looks like anandamide is a signaling molecule that has evolved to help us cope with stress. The brain, everything it does seems to be related to ways of relieving stress. It can relieve anxiety and reduce the stress response. It is involved in stress-induced analgesia. I'm never saying that right. When you stop feeling pain while fighting or fleeing, these are all mechanisms to help us prevent negative outcomes related to stress. Evidence suggests that inhibition of anandamide deactivation may contribute to the antipsychotic effect of cannabidiol, potentially representing a completely new mechanism in the treatment of schizophrenia. In 2016, a study on the mechanisms by which CBD produces antipsychotic effects identified a neurological basis for its efficacy, reporting that it triggered molecular signaling pathways associated with the effects of classic antipsychotic medications. That had a lot of big words in it for me.
Yes.
But long story short, CBD helped.
It helps schizophrenia. I think I read a similar article to what you just read out. They had the same findings. Basically, CBD helps regulate your neurotransmitters that are dysregulated in schizophrenia. That's essentially what it does. Yeah. THC obviously can exacerbate that, but it helps. Yeah. And they're doing a lot more research on it now. I saw that the studies were from 2019, 2020, 2021, which is awesome news. Yeah.
Well, I think, like, if you are suffering anything that is an inability to control the mind, don't have anything that then makes it harder to control your mind, regardless of what that is. But, like,
exactly.
You know, I said that I'm mentally strong, which is why I was able to stay upright until I to pass out, which was 2.5 hours, by the way.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a long time. But yeah, again, conscious consumer. And this is, I guess, if there's a lack of regulation, someone that does suffer from a mental illness does have a tendency for escapism, understandably. And then easy access can be an issue, and lead them down a really horrible path. What other stigmas are there?
What other with cannabis?
Yeah.
There's the memory, the short-term memory one, that cannabis is very bad for your memory.
Is that true? Because I kind of seem to think that it is.
Yeah, short-term memory, definitely. It definitely is. Like, they've done studies and it definitely affects short-term memory. And I think that's just because that's dose dependent though. That is dose dependent. If you have the right amount, then you're going to be totally fine. Usually, if you're consuming in large amounts, it's definitely going to affect your memory.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you got to have the right dose.
This is why when clients message my personal Instagram, I say, please don't message the personal Instagram because I may be high when I open this and it will be forgotten.
Yes.
The work page so that I can tend to your needs correctly when I'm not high.
That's the thing, because when you have it, like you've got a lot more going on compared, you've got a lot more stimulation within the brain compared to when you don't have THC in the system.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's a lot harder to focus and remember things.
Yeah. All right. So we've covered laziness, memory, schizophrenia. Is there any other? They're kind of the main stigmas that I can think of.
Yeah, those are the main things as well. I can't really think of anything much. Schizophrenia was a big one, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, most
If
people know
there's
about that.
any others that people want answered, they can leave a comment and we can come back to that. All right, let's go into terpenes. So this is your favorite subject, I feel. Is it? Because you're like, let's talk about terpenes, and I'm like, hang on, people don't even know what a
What a
cannabis
terpene is.
is. Yeah, let
That's true.
alone a terpene. So go ahead.
Terpenes, yes. So I'm a big believer in the entirety of the plant, the cannabis plant. So it contains 70 plus cannabinoids. It contains a number of terpenes, flavonoids, whatever you want to call it. Um, Terpenes are basically other compounds that exist in the cannabis plant. Now, they're made like it's genetic dependent. So it depends on the strain. So the strain is going to develop certain, like create certain terpenes.
Hang on, let's pause for a second because you're way smarter around this topic than most people. Let's tell everyone what terpenes are. So terpenes they're a smell, correct? That trigger a response in the body. So aromatherapy is based around terpenes. So like lavender has linalool in it, which has a calming effect. Lemon has limonene in it, which has an uplifting effect. Pine has pinene in it, which cannot remember that effect, but different, like all different plants have different terpenes. Wine, is that terpenes? Do we know if that's terpenes?
Wine, I don't know if wine has
Tannins,
terpenes.
aren't they?
Yeah, I know they got phenols and all kinds of different compounds and chemicals in there. Yeah.
I was
I'm
just
not too
trying to
sure
relate it to like something else that we sniff and we go, okay, that's what that is.
Yeah. I think lavender's a good one. Mangoes are a good one. Mangoes have myrcene. Pepper is high in caryophyllene. It's got that spicy kind of smell. What else? Yeah, and pinene, obviously pine coming from the name, that really fresh.
Yeah.
It actually opens up the airways, like opens up the lungs. They've done studies where it actually causes some bronchodilation, which is quite fascinating. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. And all of those, so studies are now showing that it's actually more of the terpenes that have an effect on how we experience the cannabis than the strains, like whether it be a sativa or indica, right?
Yeah, that's spot on. No, you're right there, Michaela, because yeah, when it doesn't matter about indica sativa anymore, it's more they call it a chemobar, so the chemical makeup of the specific strain. That's what has an influence. So the cannabinoids and the terpenes are what's going to influence your experience.
Just to make it way more confusing for
I know, right? Just to make it more fun. You got to look out for more things now.
Yes. So, all right. So let's go into the terpenes a little bit more. So, like, I know that I don't like myrcene because myrcene makes you go to sleep.
It does. Yeah.
I like limonene, which tends to coincide with your sativa plants. So things like lemon haze, for example, which is exactly how it sounds. It's like lemony and it's got lemon in it. What Golden Grove? That's another one.
Yep.
Critical Super Silver.
Yep, that's
That
another one.
Is so lemony, it actually smells like toilet cleaner.
The Critical Super Silver Haze. Yeah, very citrusy.
You've smelt it, yeah?
I've smelt it before. I haven't smelt it in a long time though. So the batches might be different. But yeah, very lemony. The lemon haze is very lemony. That Golden Grove, I think it's the Hummingbird Golden Grove. That's extremely citrusy, extremely lemony as well. That's high in lemon, definitely.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that uplifting kind of smell. It's great. Yeah.
That's the
Even
one
smelling
that
it's
like
uplifting.
I get the chats.
Yeah.
I smoke that. Like I actually should smoke and we film something one time because I'll just go off, but then I'll like go so far off that I'm like, hang on, what were we talking about? Like I'm over here now.
Yeah. You just have to keep going. Just keep
Yeah.
going there. But
So tell me
no,
a bit more about terpenes. Like what are your favorite terpenes? How do people yeah, you go.
yeah, for me, it depends. See, I like my myrcene because it does make me sleepy and it's a good muscle relaxant. So fantastic muscle relaxant. So anything with myrcene, especially after a day where you've worked, you come home, you do your training, you exercise, and you're like, all right, I'm ready to relax now. Myrcene's a great one for that. But I like my caryophyllene as well. I like that really spicy kind of smell to cannabis.
I
Yeah,
don't mind that too. Like a
it's nice.
pinene, like I tend to steer more towards like those, like the lemon, the pinene, the whatever you said, caryophyllene.
Caryophyllene. Yeah, yeah, which is like quite spicy. There's another one which is one of my favorites that I actually discovered this year. It's called farnesene, and that one it's almost like an apple kind of scent, like a subtle apple scent, and that's a naturally occurring antifungal antibiotic. That's its purpose for the plant, and they've found that to do the same thing with us. But I recently discovered that it's actually quite a nice fragrance.
So these properties where they say antifungal, antibiotic, is
Yeah.
smoking it, are we getting those effects?
See, that's the thing. This is the research on terpenes is still relatively new. So they're still doing a lot of the stuff in the lab. So all this stuff is probably happening on petri dishes, right? Or they're doing it in animals. They're not really doing it on people yet. But what they found was, and if you think about it, the plant is creating these things for its own survival. So it developing a natural antibiotic, antifungal, is going to keep pests away and it's going to keep it alive for longer. Whether that has an effect on us, we're still learning. Yeah, we're still trying to find that out.
Interesting.
Mm.
Because I do know there was articles circulating about COVID and
Yeah,
around the study around cannabis, but what people failed to realize was that it was actually THCA and CBDA, so not THC CBD, which is what you're going to get when you smoke it or heat it, and it was only done on a petri dish. That's it. So, like,
yeah,
in theory, it works really well, but we haven't heard anything beyond that yet.
exactly. Yeah, and that's where everything starts. This is an antibiotic. Is it going to be effective in people? Well, we'll have to find out. Yeah,
I believe in that book that I quoted before. Now, I will have to double back on this and like try and get my girlfriend Sheena has my book at the moment. I believe he said something about the amount of lung cancer cases. What am I trying to say? There was a lower rate of lung cancer in cannabis smokers than non-smokers.
oh, really? That's fascinating. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to like don't quote me on that one. I'll have to go back, but like that's stuck with me. So I'm tending to think that yes, that is what I've read in that book. But yeah, that would be interesting, and it would kind of be like it would be what am I saying? It'd be evidence towards what the terpene properties.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, they've actually done same thing. This is all in cultures, in tissue cultures. But I think limonene was one. Limonene, pinene, terpinolene. Those are three terpenes that are common in cannabis.
Terpinolene.
Yeah, terpinolene, that's actually it's almost like a woody kind of fragrance. That actually vaporizes at a very high temperature. So if you want to get terpinolene going, you have to go above 210 degrees.
Right. And then you
Yeah.
actually burn off a lot of the others if you're trying to reach that, I believe.
Exactly. Yeah. You'll still experience the others. You probably just won't get as much because you're burning them off. Right.
Mhm. So if
Yeah.
someone is getting a flower vape, really
Yep.
they should be researching the temperatures in which the terpenes that they're trying to access that is in that
Yep.
plant need to be heated to.
You can definitely do that. I would probably recommend have a look at the terpenes. That's great. Get a bit of education about them. But start at around about 180. Start at 180 degrees and go up or down, and then find your own temperature. Find the temperature that works best for you.
That's really hard for someone like I myself. I really struggle with that because for me,
Yeah.
I didn't know what the goal was when I was smoking that. You know, like, do I want to see lots of smoke? Do I want to feel it?
Mm.
Or like, because the differences are really subtle, right? And for someone
Yeah.
who has been a joint smoker and a bong smoker, vapor is not that same weight. And so
No.
like you are inhaling it, you don't even know. You're like, how much am I even inhaling right now? Because I'm not used to this sensation. And
Yeah.
so my goal when I first got the vape, which I don't have anymore because someone broke it, um, my goal was like, how can I get more smoke out of this? Because
Yeah.
I didn't really know what else to do. So you
Yeah.
start at 180, go up and down, and kind of see. And you would say like start at 180 and smoke it at 180 for one day, and then kind of
Yeah.
play around with another temperature the next day, so you can kind of differentiate.
Yeah, that's what I would do. I'd probably go 180, and then increase by 10-degree increments, or you can go 5-degree increments. So do 180 one night, see how you feel, journal it down if you have to. Next day, do 190, 210. And then what you'll find is some people even use multiple temperatures in the same session. So they'll start on, yeah, and that's very effective for people. So they'll start on 180, increase to 190, and then they'll finish on 200 in the one session. Yeah.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, and then you'll get a range of different flavors, effects, all that kind of stuff, all from doing that.
I
Yeah,
like the idea of that.
yeah, that's the thing. Like, play around with it and find that thing that works for you. That's personally what I do. I'll start on 180 and then I'll finish off at 200.
I think it is a good idea to journal, especially when you're starting and when you're starting with a new strain,
Yeah,
because, like you said, short-term memory loss. We could be
yeah,
something and be like, "This is great," or "This is shit," and then not remember it the next day. So
yeah.
for sure, journal it down. What is your opinion on how do you personally enjoy flowers with CBD in them? I've only smoked one because I think what people don't really realize, especially if you're buying off the street, most strains have had the CBD bred out of it because
Yeah.
the higher the CBD, the less you're going to feel the THC.
Mhm.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but people that are after CBD are going more towards tincture than flower, correct?
You'll see a lot more people taking, yeah, a tincture or sublingual oil. Yeah,
Yeah. So what's your opinion personally with your experience with CBD and THC flowers, like a
yeah.
combination flower?
I've never had a proper combination flower before. Actually, I don't think I've had a CBD flower before,
I
but
have
I have had a.
that. I haven't filled it yet though.
You haven't. From what I've heard, patient experience, because I've never actually sat down and had a proper CBD flower or balanced, but we've had patients at work who are heavy smokers. They've been smoking. I think one was smoking for 30 plus years, so they've been smoking a long time,
Mhm.
and they swapped over to a CBD flower. And the next time they came in, they told us that it was their favorite flower. So they're like, "This is the best. This is the best cannabis I've had." Like, and I think it was more so the fact that you don't, you're still completely functional. You're
Yeah.
still going through the act of smoking, rolling, doing whatever you do, and you still get that effect of where it might. I don't know if I think he was using it for anxiety, so they used it for the anxiety, kills the anxiety. They're still functional and go about their day, and they've still had a smoke.
Now I
So
try it because
yeah,
quickly you can drive on CBD flower.
technically you can. Technically you can. There's less than 1% THC in there. Obviously, see how you feel after you've consumed it. If you're feeling a little bit drowsy or whatnot, don't drive. But most people feel fine
Because
afterwards.
my doctor prescribed it to me because I said to her, sometimes I just don't want to get so baked. Sometimes
Yeah,
I just want to have a little microdose, but with the medicinal flower, my tolerance is still really low. Um, I'm just like sensitive like that. Like I'm the sort of person that gets drunk off half a glass of wine. Um,
yeah,
so my tolerance is low. And and she said, well, I can prescribe you a CBD flower. And if you want to mix it with your other flowers, you can go ahead and do that. But CBD flower is more expensive than your higher doses of THC. So that one I think was around the 220.
Oh, which CBD flavor was it? Like, don't mind me asking. Was it Eve?
Eve?
Was it that one?
maybe I filled the script for Juno.
Yep.
Juno was a balance flower. I didn't like that because no matter how little I smoked, I passed out. Like I would have like 2 puffs and just sit on the couch and be like, oh, I'm just gonna have a little nap now, and wake up hours later.
Wow. And that was the balance flower as
That was
well.
balance flower. So I think it was like 11% THC.
Yeah. Ah, Juno, what is it? It's like six. It's low. It's very low. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was shocked. I'm like, hang on. My doctor is Dr. Priya from Heyday Clinic. I was like, that made me fall asleep. That didn't make it easier for me to get about my day. So that's why she prescribed the CBD flower that
Yeah.
she said that I could mix. Before
That's
we go
fascinating.
into finding strains and whatever that suit us, do you have anything more that you want to say about the terpenes?
About the terpenes. No, that's terpenes. I believe that it's just the combination of the terpenes, and specifically, you find that it might be a combo of specific terpenes that work for you rather than just one terpene. If that makes sense. But at the moment, the one terpene that seems to do, or two terpenes that seem to do, or have the most research behind it, are myrcene, caryophyllene, and even limonene. But myrcene and caryophyllene, they're going to help you relax the most if you're going to have those. So yeah, if anyone wants to relax, look for myrcene and caryophyllene.
I don't want to relax.
Yeah, if you don't want to relax, limonene's the way to go. And avoid myrcene. You want to avoid myrcene completely.
That's
Yeah.
quite hard because myrcene seems to be pretty dominant.
It is pretty dominant. Caryophyllene and myrcene are the most dominant terpenes in cannabis. Yeah.
What are the other uplifting terpenes?
Terpinolene can be quite uplifting, and so is the farnesene, the other one I mentioned before.
What sort of strains are we going to find those sorts
Of terpenes in. You'll usually find them in more sativa dominant strains. So like your Jack Heraz, your Jack Haze, your Royal Mobies. I think the Golden Grove is a landrace, is a Thai landrace.
What does that mean?
Landrace basically means it comes from a specific area of the world and it hasn't been modified.
I think it's Jamaican.
What was that?
I think Golden Grove is Jamaican.
It's grown in Jamaica, but the strain is a Thailand race. So they've got the genetics from Thailand and then grown them in Jamaica. Yeah.
So interesting.
So
then I guess that brings me into like the last thing that I wanted to speak about, which was strains. Like I guess how are people, like how do we know? So like personally, so I'm kind of an anomaly because I smoke cannabis for anxiety. I did it for depression as well because it helped me switch. And you hear a lot of smokers say this, or a lot of cannabis consumers say this, that it changes your perspective. So it took me out of an emotional state into a logical state. Like sometimes so much so that if I'm arguing with someone, I don't want to smoke because I'm not ready to get out of my ego and realize that they have a point. You know, like I'll smoke and I'll be like, fuck, I so understand why they're saying that, but do I want to admit that right now? Maybe not. So like that's what really helped me with the depression, and I guess with the anxiety as well, because when we're anxious, we're kind of spiraling, and it's an emotional thing, right? Most people like you, I think I saw a meme one time that was like, those sativa smokers are just showing off that they don't have anxiety.
Yeah.
Like something along those lines. And it's like, and that's funny because I smoke purely for depression and anxiety, and sativas and uplifting strains tend to be where I gravitate towards. And the reason I know that is because when I smoke an indica or something that has high levels of those relaxing terpenes, by the time I've finished a script, or like obviously back in the day when I was getting a black market, I was not having a script. So I would finish like a quarter bag or a half bag. By the time I would get to the end of that, I'd be depressed. I'd be suffering like really low motivation. And I guess this ties into the stigmas as well around laziness and finding what's right for you. And then like I guess that brings in the whole being a conscious consumer again. So like for me personally, I like anything that's uplifting, but actually rewind, not anything, because what is it, silver, critical, super silver haze,
Critical super haze. Yeah.
that made me neurotic. Like
Yeah.
that made me one day I changed my outfit 4 times. I was at home only. Like I could be naked all day if I wanted to. I didn't need to go anywhere. No one was seeing me. No one was coming over. I was at home by myself smoking. And I was like, it was all sweats, but I changed my outfit of like trackies 4 times. I was like, come on, girl. Like, what the hell are you doing?
The super sativa.
Yeah, that's what that. Why would that have happened to me?
It was probably the chemical makeup of that flower. So it was probably the specific terpenes and the specific cannabinoids in that flower. That's the way they acted on your body. So once they got into your system, they activated certain pathways that made you almost neurotic, that made you change 4 times. Yeah. So it just wasn't the right fit.
Yeah. On the flip side
Yeah.
of that, I remember someone gave me flour that was really indica. It's an indica dominant flower. It must have had a lot of, and I do find that it's more common to find the relaxing terpenes than it is to find the uplifting ones, because people tend to gravitate towards that more. Someone gave me some of this flour. I had been starving. I hadn't eaten all day because I'd been so busy. I got home and all I wanted to do was smoke a joint and eat some dinner. I smoked a joint. 45 minutes later, I'm like, bitch, feed yourself. And then I would like stand up and just be standing there like a Sims character. And then I'd like, get food. And then I would walk to the fridge and I would just stare at the fridge. And then I'd be like, open the fridge. And then I would open the fridge and I'd be standing there staring at it. And I'd be like, Michaela, just make something, like, and I just was so relaxed that like I couldn't get anything done. So I guess that's like the two extremes, right? The being so neurotic and then being like not even just, like zombie.
Just zombieing. That you're right, spot on. Like there's a specific strain. Well, this was when I was in Denver, and I had a sativa, and this one was called Green Crack, and this is meant to be one of the most sativa dominant strains available. And same thing, I had some of that. I just tried it, and then I was sitting at home, didn't have anything to do, but I had to do something. So I ended up cleaning for like 2 hours, just kept cleaning and cleaning and cleaning. House was spotless. It was great, but I couldn't sit there and do nothing. Like it really got you stimulated. So yeah, those are the two extremes. And the thing is, you want to find that perfect middle ground. You don't want to be too neurotic. You don't want to be zombified. You want to be able to completely function, be happy, and go about your day.
Yeah. And so, like you were saying before we were recording, it's kind of just trial and error, right?
Yes, it's trial and error. It is trial and error at the end of the day. Usually what they say is if you have the ability to smell it, which we don't have here in Australia at the moment, your nose doesn't lie sometimes, majority of the time, because those terpenes and compounds in the flower are literally stimulating the receptors in your nose. And if they're pleasant, you're going to get a pleasant response. If you don't like it, then you're going to pull away from it. And usually it's a good idea to follow your nose.
Yeah, it's the same with aromatherapy. Like if anyone's gone and had like a massage or something where they say, all right, smell these oils and pick your favorite one, that is what your body needs at that time. And that is the disadvantage here in Australia, that we don't have those little canisters where they, like the person behind the counter or that comes, like the person that works there, can open and be like, smell this, what do you think? And like that's also a really fun experience because you get to like learn about the plant as well, because you get to smell that. Don't you love it? Before Astrid was around, I remember people would be like, smell this weed, this smells so good, and I would be like, it just smells like weed. Like it doesn't smell any different to the last bag and the bag before that, and I'm pretty sure the bag before that was grass. But like when you actually smell proper cannabis, the smells are very different.
Very different. Yes. Especially when you get two completely, like if you get a sativa, like if you get one of your lemon hazes and then you'll get like a black cherry pie and you smell the difference between those two, one will be like a lemon, one will literally be like a cherry pie. And you'll be able to tell the difference.
Yeah, and
So
kind of where
yeah.
the names come from.
Yeah, exactly. That's how they name it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
How did you find what you liked?
more, it's definitely same thing, trial and error. It's more trial and error. Did follow my nose. It's a lot easier overseas because you have access to smell it. And then once you do find certain strains, it's more the effects as well. But again, it was all conscious consuming. Like you conscious on how you feel when you have it. You don't just have it and then just, oh, whatever happens, happens. Yeah.
Also, like, don't just have it and be at home and sit on the couch and watch TV. Like, do what you want to be doing when you are smoking. So, like, for me, I am not really someone that naturally gets creative or even like that embodiment practice. I am very like masculine energy naturally, like in structure, in like want to tick things off my list. So that's why I smoke. So I know that something's good for me when I get up and I want to cook or like I want to put music on and dance because like that is the whole reason why I'm smoking. So
Yeah.
if I, no matter what strain I'm smoking, if I'm just like sitting in a room and sit on the couch and watch some TV, I'm probably going to fall asleep. So like
Yeah.
it's kind of a disservice to the plant to try and get it to do everything for you. It's got to just be like encouraging you along. One thing that I did find super helpful in the US, and I hope that one day we can get these here, is like it's like a little sampler pack where
Yeah.
there's like 5 pre-rolls ranging from like the most sativa of sativas to the most indica of indicas. So like those extremes that we were talking about, because sometimes those extremes suit people, you know,
Yeah.
like it just didn't like suit me to be on that both ends of that extreme. Most people kind of find somewhere in the middle. But I got to experience it. And what was really cute about this pack was it kind of told you what to do when you smoked it. So like one was like be social, one was like go for a hike, one was watch a scary movie, one was just relax and have some alone time. Like they kind of prompted you, and then you could smoke them and go and do those things and see kind of how that affected you.
Yeah, yeah, and that's probably the best way to figure out which strain is right for you. You need to trial it first. Yeah, that's the only way, and
Absolutely.
then take the notes.
Yeah. Um, anything else that you want to add? Any other research that you did that you were like, I really want to bring this up tonight?
The schizophrenia one was probably the main one that I wanted to bring up. Yeah, and how CBD has actually been shown to be helping that lately. That was probably the main one, and then plenty of research on terpenes and everything like that, which we covered, which was good fun.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome. Well, I'll probably stop hitting record now and we'll stay on and have a little chat for a second. But if anyone has any questions, pop them underneath and we will answer them as best we can. But I hope you all enjoyed this. Bye.
awesome. See you guys.